Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here, and welcome to episode 8 of Gold Goes to the Movies. New prop for Father's Day. It's slightly kind of turned on its side, but hopefully you can work out what it is because it also ties in nicely with a t-shirt that I got for Father's Day as well. So just about keeping the momentum going of new t-shirts and new or different t-shirts and different toys and movie prop type things from around the house. And yeah, these two actually fit together. Coordinating for a change. I should actually also very quickly say thank you to someone called H.E. Sawyer who sent me, and I think, to be fair, this is a very belated thanks. I think this would have been sent way before I even started doing these movie videos, but unfortunately I don't go into my office too much. I work more remotely, and when I went in there the other day, someone said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we took in a package for you, a little parcel." And it was like months ago, and no one had thought to mention it. It was put in a locker. But H.E. Sawyer very kindly went to Petra in Jordan, where they filmed the finale to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and sent me these, which are really cool. They're just so cool. They're two little fridge magnets. Yeah, very much took me aback when I found it. So, but there's no kind of like address or contact numbers or anything. So I don't know whether H.E. Sawyer will be watching this, but thank you so much. It was very kind. Just a nice little thoughtful thing. Very nice. And they will go up on my fridge. Absolutely. Yeah, just absolutely took me by surprise. As you can tell, even now I'm struggling to talk about it. So today, 4 movies we've got to talk about. The new Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, which is on Netflix. The Bikeriders, which I watched at the cinema. And a couple of movies that have been on Sky, newish films from last year. Five Nights at Freddy's and The Exorcist Believer. 4 very different films. We like to have a bit of variety on this channel. Let's dive straight into the return of Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley. It's slightly oddly named Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I don't know whether they were just trying to catch the kind of younger market of people who might remember the 2005 song by Crazy Frog. I've tried to put it out of my mind if you haven't already. It was quite big in the UK and Europe. I think it was number 1 it went to. It's essentially kind of like a frog version or speeded up version of the Beverly Hills Cop Axel F song. Definitely more a European hit, although I think it did come out in America when in the top 50. I had a little look up. And I don't know whether that's what they're trying to get, that some younger people who maybe haven't seen the Beverly Hills Cop films think, oh yeah, is that anything to do with that song? It kind of is in a roundabout way. But I just thought that was a strange one, Axel F. But, not Axel Foley. I don't know. I'm sure there's a logic behind it, and maybe Eddie Murphy has explained it in some interview somewhere. But with this movie, I've got to be honest, went in with very, very, very low expectations. After certainly the last of the series, a fair few years back. And just often because we know sometimes revisiting a film after a long, long time works. Top Gun Maverick, very good. Other movies, a little bit of a differing quality output. And it depends how much nostalgia you go for and things like that. I think going in with a low expectation, this movie was quite a good thing. And I think it worked for me. It was better than I expected. I'd say quite a lot better than I actually expected it to be. It's quite fun. Purposefully, I presume it's meant to feel like an 80s movie, and I think that really helps it. Both, yeah, certainly in good ways. There are some ways where it feels like, okay, that's a little bit 80s. We probably would have had more up-to-date stuff in that regard, but it's got lots of nostalgia, which I do like. I must admit, I do like nostalgia when it brings stuff back, like Star Wars The Force Awakens. I like the nostalgic elements too. I'm not going to lie. And I do feel like this film's got a lot of very decent action sequences as well, including a very big one towards the end. It could have been funnier. I don't think the script was quite funny enough. I think they could have let Eddie Murphy go a little bit kind of, off the leash even more. But it did feel like an 80s action movie, and I love an 80s action movie. So it was more than serviceable. It really was. I loved the first 2 films, even though the second one's a little bit of a retread. Third one's horrendous. But this fourth one, yeah, it kind of restores a little bit of faith in the series. It's not perfect, and I don't think the critics will love it. It seems to be a bit of a mixed review so far. But I think if you go into it expecting it to be utter trash, it's really not. It's actually quite a decent film. So just in case anyone's missed out on the whole Beverly Hills Cop franchise, including one of my friends this week actually told me he'd never seen one of the Beverly Hills Cop films. So people are out there that haven't seen them. The first Beverly Hills Cop, just to make me feel really old, came out all the way back in 1984. Directed by Martin Brest. Second one was pretty much quickly brought out after because the first one was such a big success. Came out 3 years later, directed by Tony Scott. Like I say, the first one was an excellent 80s movie, action movie, real kind of set the bar, I think, for a lot of movies that came out during that decade afterwards. Second one, definitely, like I said, was a bit of a retread, but I think because it was directed by Tony Scott, it looked awesome. And it had some good scenes in it. Probably wasn't as funny as the first one. And I don't think Eddie Murphy himself is the biggest fan of it. I think he's called it one of the most successful mediocre films ever or something like that, he said. Then came the third one. Third one came 7 years later in 1994, directed by John Landis. Set in a theme park. When I say trash, that was trash. Oh, it's awful. It's so awful. I had actually realised, kind of going into watching this fourth one, I'd only ever watched Beverly Hills Cop 3 once. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to catch up on it. I'm going to see what it was like. I could barely remember most of it, which actually seems to be a blessing, having now watched it again. I've watched the first two a million times, and the third one just, I must have been mentally scarred by it when I was young because I had not watched it again. Other than the first 10 to 15 minutes, which are set in Detroit, the rest of it is awful, and I mean awful. It almost feels like a comic book movie. It's like they just took everything that kind of worked about the first two and went, hey, I know, let's not kind of make this huge, let's expand on that, let's make this big and over the top and silly, and it's just dreadful. It's got one scene quite early on where a key character passes away, let's put it that way, and within a couple of minutes, Eddie Murphy is in kind of like a car chase, gurning at the camera, smiling wildly when someone that, he quite cares for has died. It's very, very odd. And actually, there's a funny little nod towards it in this latest film where one character talks about a certain part of his police career not being his finest hour. And it's obviously is a little dig towards that film. Eddie Murphy hated that film. He called it atrocious in one review I read. Which a lot of people actually also lay some of the fault at his door. There's a lot of feeling that John Landis was not the right director for it. But also, I think Eddie Murphy apparently at the time wanted to scale back on the humour of the other ones and make a bit more of a serious kind of action movie. It's just none of the above. It's horrendous. It's not funny. The action is dreadful. It looks cheap for most of it. There's so many backgrounds watching it this week and just like, when a fake background is a fake background. And my word, some of these even just scenes where there was no real need for it to be a fake background. Although I have my suspicions that there is one scene towards the end of this new Beverly Hills Cop film, which I'd love you to let me know in the comments if you've watched it, where I think Eddie Murphy is not in the same scene as a couple of other characters, and it comes right at the end. I could be wrong, and it could just be the lighting, it could be something, but I just wonder whether, did they film that a little bit afterwards, but he was somewhere else, couldn't do it, and they had to put together this composite of him in the background with his, I don't know. But it's kind of in a weird way a nod to Beverly Hills Cop 3, which had so many of those horrendous scenes, and it actually made I think the first two films made around $300 million worldwide. That one made just over 100 million, I think. It was absolutely horrendous. So a fourth film has been in the works for a long time, rumoured for years. It was actually announced in the 1990s after the third one was coming along, but it didn't, quite clearly. I think the script was always a problem. Went through a million rewrites over the years after. Brett Ratner was attached to direct at one point. I remember that in the news. Then they shelved the fourth film because they couldn't find a decent enough script and went down a TV series idea. But it wasn't going to be a TV series about Axel Foley. It was going to be a TV series about Axel Foley's son. And a pilot was actually filmed, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, no less. obviously celebrated movie director of such huge films, Men in Blacks, Addams Family, things like that, and so many others as well. But yes, this was a film kind of centered around the son of Axel Foley, and it had a cameo from Eddie Murphy, who didn't really want to be a regular in a TV show. He only really wanted to do a movie if it came about, because obviously, a big star, Eddie Murphy. The pilot apparently is out there. It's been leaked. I haven't seen it. Apparently it was leaked on the internet a fair few years back. CBS did not pick it up. Eddie Murphy tells this story where he thinks it's because of his cameo. He thinks that had he not been in it, actually it might have gone to series. But because he does this little cameo in it, the test audiences, as he describes it, were watching, and they're meant to kind of turn these knobs on their, I don't know, the little computer board thing that tells what they like and what they don't like. And apparently when he did his cameo, they all went, "Way!" like turn the kind of the dial round to say, "We love this." And unfortunately, the TV executives saw that and went, "Well, that's the only bit they really loved. So if he's not going to be in it, what's the point of doing the series?" There's other differing views on why it didn't happen, or but that seems like a pretty good one. If you're going to have an Axel Foley series and not have Axel Foley Son series. Yeah, so that didn't happen. Then it came back into the thought of it was going to be a movie, and Adil Al-Arbi and Bilal Fallah were attached to direct it about 8 years ago. They would eventually, you'd have heard me speak about them in previous videos, because they went on to do the third and fourth Bad Boys movies instead, which were huge successes, and you do wonder how it would have turned out had they done this fourth one or not. It didn't happen with them. Finally, a script was agreed upon. Another change of director, Mark Malloy, who's mainly does directing like big adverts, kind of advertising, big brands, things like that. This was his directorial debut. He does a decent job, to be fair. It's like I say, it's got the vibe of the first one while bringing a little bit into the modern era. Paramount Pictures struck a deal with Netflix to develop the film with an option for a sequel as well. So that means that with Amazon getting Coming to America, as in the sequel, Coming to America, it means that the reason they got that was because it was coming out during the pandemic or just after, wasn't it? So it ended up being a streaming thing. But it means that Eddie Murphy's two big revivals of two of his biggest kind of franchises, technically I know Coming to America was a one-off film at the time, but both of them went straight to streaming, which is, unusual. If you'd asked anyone years back what would have happened to Eddie Murphy's big movies and the next one in the chain, and both on streaming. But it looks good, it sounds good, the music soundtrack is brilliant, and like I say, the 80s vibe really works. They do update a lot of the themes, and you hear the Axel F music in the background at little moments. It's got these nice little flourishes to it. Eddie Murphy, of course, is what it's all pinned around, and he does slip back into the character of Axel Foley pretty effortlessly, to be honest. He's now 63, and it is mad to think that when the first Beverly Hills Cop came out, he was 23. I must admit, I didn't realise he was that young. Strange little fact for you. Do you remember the iconic laugh that you would always associate Eddie Murphy with? I didn't realise this, and it was only because I got through this film and just thought there was something that kind of you didn't hear, and I kind of realised afterwards it was the laugh. And it kind of almost, that laugh became associated with the character Axel Foley as well, almost pretty much as Eddie Murphy. It was something that he would do in those films. Apparently he stopped doing it, Eddie Murphy, because everyone when they were doing impressions of him would just do that laugh. That would it. People would actually come up to him on the street and do this laugh. And he hated the fact that he was just being defined by a laugh, and he felt he was more than that. So he actually forced himself, trained his body to no longer laugh like that, which is why you won't really ever hear him do that laugh in a film anymore. Very strange thing, and it's a shame in a way, because I associate that laugh maybe more with Axel Foley than I did with Eddie Murphy, but clearly it was something that he was getting in his life and just didn't like it. But he's very good in this. He is. Like I say, I could have done with a bit more humour, written, better, funnier lines for him and his character, or maybe just let him go off on one a little bit at times and off the leash. But he is very good, and he handles the action very well, as much as obviously he does. I'm sure there'll be stunt people and doing many things. Lots more returning faces. Judge Reinhold and John Ashton return as Rosewood and Taggart. When I rewatched the third one, I didn't realise Taggart wasn't even in it. But but he is very much back in this one as well. Paul Reiser is back with a role that gives him a little bit more to work with, and Bronson Pinchot is back as Surge in a nice little kind of turn, which is way better than the one he does in the third one, which is just daft. There's new blood, of course, to bring it into the next generation. You've got Taylor Page as Axel Foley's estranged daughter, Jane. So funny that the series was going to be about his son, and this one is about his daughter. There's no mention that there's another child, whether that is left just kind of unsaid in case they do ever kind of return to that idea. The always watchable Joseph Gordon-Levitt is back. He's back. He is a Beverly Hills Cop detective. Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Detective, whichever you want to take of those. He's good. It's a good role for him. It's kind of like the straight man almost to Eddie Murphy as the film goes on. But also, yeah, there's a little bit of kind of interest there with other characters too. Kevin Bacon is in it as, let's say, a police captain. It's very much a cut and paste of a lot of other Kevin Bacon roles you'll have seen. I'm not spoiling anything, but you'll see him quite early on in this film and go, okay, Kevin Bacon's going to be that kind of character. You just know. Right. It is a cut and paste performance from him. He's done it in a fair few films. I won't mention them because then you'll get an idea of maybe where his character goes. But yeah, it is. He's very good at it. Don't get me wrong. But it is very much a dialing it in performance that he's done many, many times. Plot's not bad. Stronger than maybe it could have been, which, like I said, they've had a million years to work on the script, so it had to be something that's not horrendous. Very much centred around the police force, corruption, things like that. There's a good. I quite like the father-daughter dynamic that goes on. That's quite well handled as well. While I say it isn't the funniest, or it could have been funnier, it's probably the funniest after the first film of the four. And yeah, maybe some of the best action scenes in the whole series as well. Like I say, there is one or two towards the end that are so big, and it's very well handled. Looks great. Because obviously that's the other issue, with Beverly Hills Cop 3 and the horrendous backgrounds, the fake backgrounds, the use of special effects that were dreadful at the time. With Ultra HD and 4K and all of that now, and watching it on Netflix, especially if you watch it on a big screen, everything's got to be spot on because it's going to be very, very noticeable the special effects are dodgy. And they're not in this. They deal with it well. Yeah, like I say, it could have been a bit tighter, a bit funnier in parts, but it is still just comes in under 2 hours, I think, and it doesn't really drag at all. It's got a decent pace to it, but just some of the comedy scenes could have been a bit tighter. Not a pointless exercise at all. I enjoyed it. I think people are going to sneer at it a little bit. Some of them, maybe the critics, but I would imagine a lot of people will go in hearing that and find it better than they expected. That's my theory. And I do think if it had come out to cinema, it would have been one of those that probably done quite well. I think people would have gone to watch it out of nostalgia. Jerry Bruckheimer, producer, Eddie Murphy Productions, which is always, I think, has been most of the ones since the first one. They both admitted that they are developing ideas for a fifth movie. So yeah, I would watch it. I would. I like I say, love a bit of nostalgia, love a bit of 80s action movie, especially cop movies. 80s buddy movies were great, weren't they? Buddy cop films. So yeah, so that's Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. And it's all right. It's good fun. Let me know what you think about it. Some people aren't going to like it. Some people just don't go in expecting too much. That's the best way with these films. Second film I watched this week was The Bikeriders. I went to the cinema to watch this. I really, really liked it. Technically, it came out in 2023 at various film festivals, but it was delayed in cinemas because of all the strikes and everything. I've seen it described as Goodfellas on motorbikes. I can see that in certain aspects because there's a few parallels, the themes of finding a family, narration that it has as well of sorts. It's kind of a narration. It's more someone giving an interview. And it takes place over a number of years, so it has that saga element to it. But on the whole, I'd say it's a very different thing. It's not rooted in crime quite as much as that wonderful Martin Scorsese film. It's based on a photo book of the same name, The Bikeriders by Danny Lyon. He travelled with and chronicled the life of bikers in the Chicago chapter of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club over the course of 4 years in the 1960s. This film, it follows the more fictionalised Vandals Motorcycle Club. The cast list is superb. So you've got Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Boyd Holbrook, that you might know from Narcos and various other films. He was in one of the Predator films more recently. Also in the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny as well. It's also got Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, who, of course, we're used to seeing on the bike. Many others as well. They're all very good. All the casts are absolutely on point. It's written and directed by Jeff Nichols, who is a bit of a critic's darling, it's fair to say, early on with films like Take Shelter, which also had Michael Shannon in it alongside Jessica Chastain, Mud with Matthew McConaughey. I should stress, Michael Shannon, I think, has been in every single one of Jeff Nichols' films. He's like his I don't know what you call it, a muse, a lucky charm, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, all of the acting in this is very, very good. Austin Butler continues this run of leading man roles, very cool leading man roles after Elvis, Apple's Masters of the Air as well, TV series, which is very good, which is the next one on the Spielberg, Tom Hanks kind of war series thing after the Pacific. And yeah, it's Band of Brothers. That was the first one I was trying to get in my head. Band of Brothers, Pacific, and now Masters of the Air. And yeah, Austin Butler's very, very good in the Bikeriders as the rebellious Benny. It's very much a James Dean rebel without a cause kind of role for him. And he plays it to perfection. There's kind of nice layers to it. It's not just your archetypal kind of bad boy, want to get myself in trouble kind of role. He's very good in it as well. I do like Austin Butler. I really liked him in Elvis, and he's very good in Masters of the Air as well. Good in June too, as well, part 2. Jodie Comer absolutely immerses herself in the role of Kathy, who ends up kind of being Austin Butler's love interest. But she's much more than that. I always hate using the word love interest because it kind of makes it sound like that's all she's there for. It's absolutely not. It's a very strong role. She's got this very high-pitched Chicago accent, which I'm guessing is based on the original lady she's playing. Because at the end of the movie, you see lots of the photos from the book that are recreated during the film of various characters. And this high-pitched Chicago accent, it really surprises you to begin with. And I would say in the first 5 minutes, you're a bit like, it kind of feels like, oh, this is going to grate. But actually, it becomes a very endearing part of her character. And she's superb in this. I do wonder whether there's going to be any kind of... I don't know whether... I'm trying to remember now whether it had been up for any Oscar or award ceremonies, because technically it came out in 2023. I don't know whether it works like that. I guess, is it from when it has its cinema release, perhaps? I don't know. But she is very good. She is very good indeed. For me, though, it's just Tom Hardy. So good. I love Tom Hardy's acting. I know, yes, once in a while he can go a little bit over the top, but I would say that he's just one of the most watchable movie stars out there for me. And he is brilliant in this. He is the leader of the Vandals. Everything kind of revolves around him and his performance, I feel. He kind of trying to hold everything together while this motorcycle club that he's created, just as a recreational thing. I just realised the ghost trap has slowly worked its way down to just sitting normally, so it probably looks more like it's meant to now. But yeah, he's created this motorcycle club, which initially just for friendship and because he watches the movie The Wild One, and it kind of evolves into something that is much larger and probably darker than he ever intended it to be. And his character is a bit like a Don Vito Corleone crossed with Marlon Brando from The Wild One. Probably is a somewhere in the middle of the two, while trying to do the right thing, but also sometimes doing some not so right things. And he's very good. I kind of feel like Austin Butler and Tom Hardy are both throwback kind of movie stars. They could have been born in a different era and absolutely fitted in with a past time. And I think that lends itself very nicely to them being utterly believable as bikers in the 1960s. I think this film's coming quite quickly to streaming, if it hasn't already, as in paid for streaming. I really recommend it though. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't know much about like motorcycle club culture, especially in America and the way it all started. and I felt like I kind of got a real sense of that and learned about it, and it was interesting. It's if you don't go into it, if you don't like motorbikes and things like that, it's not so much about that. It's about people finding a place, belonging, kind of having a family that isn't blood related, and yeah, very much what was happening at that time as well. And it's got this very cool, like I say, good fellas style narration that is more Jodie Comer really doing an interview with the author, who is also a character within this film as well. But you also get this sense of everything slowly unraveling as the film goes on as well. And like I say, acting is superb. That was that if you can get the chance to see the Bikeriders, it's very, very good. The reviews have been pretty much on the whole very good, and I haven't heard anyone really say a bad word about it yet. It's one of those that I think a lot of people will enjoy on streaming if they missed it at the movies. Third film, Five Nights at Freddy's. 2023 film based on the very popular video game series. It came out in the US, I think, both streaming and cinematically at the same time. I think I read that somewhere. Most of the reviews for it have been pretty negative. However, at the box office, it made almost 300 million worldwide, which I'm guessing is because of the fan base that was there from the games. It's from the Blumhouse production stable, and it's been their most successful movie to date. So there is a sequel coming along. Basically, if you're not aware of the game or the movie, the plot revolves around a security guard who suffered a childhood trauma, which you'll find out over the course of the film. And he's sent to keep an eye on, at night time, of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is an old abandoned pizzeria, which is like complete with animatronic characters and things like that. But of course, not all is not as it seems. Actors-wise, you've got Josh Hutcherson of The Hunger Games and the two Journey films, Journey to the Centre of the Earth movies. Piper Rubio is very good as his young sister. She's excellent. I'm imagining we're going to see her in a fair bit more in the years to come. Elizabeth Lale, who's mostly a TV actress, plays a cop who repeatedly checks in on his Hutcherson security guard. You've got some experienced actors in there as well. Matthew Lillard of Scream and Scooby-Doo fame. Also, Mary Stuart Masterson, who has been working, but I haven't seen her in years myself. It hasn't been anything I've seen. She was everywhere in the early 90s in films like Benny and June, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, Bad Girls. She had this little run where she seemed to be in everything. And then really, I don't know whether she took a break from acting or anything, but certainly the things she's been in since have been maybe more low profile. So yeah, this film, Five Nights at Freddy's. It's directed by Emma Tammy. It's got the potential to be something really good, but it never really reaches it because it's not scary. It's not really quirky either. It could be like the games, I'm told, are very dark and quite twisted, and it never gets to that level. It's almost family friendly. Not quite. I wouldn't take young children to see it or watch it with them, but you'll see there's probably only a couple of scenes that actually stop it from being a family film, albeit one with a darker undertone. But yeah, it's a shame, really. My youngest daughter is a fan of the games, and she was explaining to me, because I've never played them, she said they apparently deliberately, with the movie's plot, tried to get away from what is more of a complex plot in the games, which is often the case when you adapt a book or a computer game series. But they wanted to give the fans of the game something fresh, so they didn't go into it thinking, well, we know how this ends. But I think in doing so, from what she was telling me, they've very much simplified the story, taken it in a slightly different direction, diluted it, and pretty much extracted all the scares and any tension out of it, which is a shame. I think maybe had they gone full on into it and tried to make it quite a dark and scary film, I could have seen where it would have worked. And because there's nothing wrong with the acting's decent. Hutcherson is a very watchable, tortured lead character, but it just never reaches the places it needs to reach. You know, my wife is a big jumper in scary movies. Honestly, even the smallest things, she will jump out of her skin. She didn't do it once in this film, and that's, you know, jumpometer is probably a good way of judging any scary film, and it just didn't do it. It's a perfectly kind of watchable film. You'll get to the end of it and you won't feel it's rubbish. It's absolutely not a rubbish film, but you just kind of get to the end of that. You go, it could have just been so much more. Could have been far more to it. because of the money it's made, there is going to be a sequel apparently next year. It's coming around quite quickly, again directed by Tammy. So hopefully they'll fix it and just give it that bit more oomph to it, which is what is needed. Final movie of the bunch is one that definitely falls into the trying to be scary category, and that is The Exorcist Believer. It's the 6th instalment of the Exorcist series, which obviously started all of those years ago. It actually also kind of partially falls under the Blumhouse banner as well, because Jason Blum was one of the producers. This time, the concept is there. If you're not aware, the Exorcist series, girl gets possessed, and the various movies after that slightly tweaked around with the formula. This one is, they've gone away and thought, what can we do? What can we do? I know, we'll have 2 girls possessed. So 2 missing girls find that they've got this strange connection, and it turns out that they are both possessed. I would say it's got some genuinely quite creepy moments. It's got some very unpleasant ones where, I'm quite a fan of horror films, but there are some moments in this I was like, oh, that's just kind of really nasty. But it just never really gets anywhere, and the ending is very like, really? That's it? I think the hook of this movie is that Ellen Burstyn is back, reprising her role from the original film. She was the mother in the original film. She's probably the best thing about the film. There's another little nostalgic cameo during the course of the film, which I won't spoil, but a nod back to years gone by. The main lead is Leslie Odom Jr. He is kind of wasted here. This is the guy that was Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actor for One Night in Miami a couple of years back, 2021 Oscars. And also for Best Achievement in Music Written for a Motion Picture, for original song as well. And I like him. I liked him in Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos prequel. He's obviously also in Hamilton, Glass Onion, the Knives Out sequel. But this just is some moments where obviously he's given a little chance to act, but mostly it's running around trying to take everything in that's happening. It's also got Norbert Leo Butz in it, the fantastically named Norbert Leo Butz, who I really liked in Bloodline on Netflix. He's in that. He just plays this absolutely chaotic character in that. And yeah, this is a straighter role, but he's good. He's good. But yeah, I think it's probably all about Ellen Burstyn in this one and seeing her in this. It's directed by David Gordon Green, who has got a real horror film streak going on now. He directed the last 3 Halloween films, so he's very much maybe found his lane, perhaps. I think he does other stuff as well, but very much clearly likes his horror films. And like I say, it's got its genuinely quite dark moments, but it's just a bit messy and never really feels like it goes where it really wants to. It kind of... There's parts where you feel like it's going a little bit off track here. It's going very dark, and then it will bring it back to be very formulaic horror film. It doesn't really know exactly what it wants to be. But yeah, it's... Look, if you want to watch a Saturday night film that does have a couple of jumps and some moments where you're like, ugh, it's that, but you're not going to come out of it thinking it's the greatest film you've ever seen. It's probably the weakest of, definitely the weakest of the 4 that I've spoken about today. So yeah, so that's it. That's the 4. New ones coming out soon. We've got Maxine comes out this week at the cinema. Fly Me to the Moon with Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson, where they kind of, I think they're dramatising or filming an advert for the moon landings to try to get funding for it or something like that. I'm trying to remember the plot line now. Despicable Me 4, for those with kids, also comes out that week as well. Twisters, the following week after that, which I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, Deadpool and Wolverine arrives at the end of the month. Oh my goodness, after the build-up and the hype of that, and so many people are going to go and watch that in the first weekend. Please be worth it all. Please be worth the hype, the wait, the promotion, everything. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds off, and Sean Levy, the director, all off on a massive worldwide tour right now, making sure not a stone is unturned in someone that might want to watch Deadpool and Wolverine. So yes, as I said before, I'm going to be in Japan when it comes out, and I'm really, really hoping that they show it in English with subtitles. Otherwise, I'm stuffed because I don't come back from that work trip for a good week or so afterwards, and the spoilers are going to be everywhere. So, yeah, it's going to be rubbish, as I'm really looking forward to it. But there you go. Hopefully before that happens, I'll squeeze in another one of these videos or two with more movie suggestions. As always, just if you took anything from this, any things you think, oh, do you know what, I'll give that a go, or anything that you think, well, I might swerve that, then that's kind of the point of them. And yeah, so there you go. Right, time to head off. I'm going to go and try and watch something else. Yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.